That's what I tell myself to cope with and deal. Try to convince myself these several years were not even real. Try to convince myself the media was making this up. That if I wait here, Morpheus will be waking me up. But instead I'm in my bed, game over. I ain't even drank nothing, but I gotta hang.
Welcome back, guys. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye. We've been having some technical difficulties. That was the internet's fault. That actually was not the station's fault. That was the internet, so God knows. It's interesting to note that ever since Microsoft took over Skype, Skype has just crashes constantly. It's got nothing but problems now. You know, typical Microsoft. Take something good, touch it, and turn it to crap. Before we went to break and got cut off, and I'm not really sure exactly where it cut us off, Mark was talking, about how people need to wake up, and he was talking about Battlefield Earth and how people need to go watch it because it's a great allegory for, what's really going on. And I think he's 100% correct that if people, and I've said this before, we are not going to get any further than we are right now until people spiritually evolve. Ain't going to happen. Because everybody in the truth movement is still, not even in the truth movement, people that are waking up, they still have just, I don't know if it's, I want to say programming, because I don't think it's really beliefs. I just think that belief is based on stuff that's programmed into their head, from childhood on up. But they still have, I guess for lack of a better term, whether it's religious dogma or just, stuff that that's been pumped into their heads their whole life. We're not going to get much further until people start to spiritually awaken. Not just mentally, but spiritually awaken. Mark, what do you think about?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the key right there. I mean, I'll put out a quote. There's a philosopher who goes online by the handle Aquinas, who I like. He wrote a little treatise called On Liberty, and it tries to explain to people in that little treatise what natural law is, how it operates, and how the lack of understanding of natural law is what is creating our enslavement. We are creating our enslavement through our lack of understanding of natural law. He has a quote that he opens up this little pamphlet with. It's actually posted on my podcast section on one of the earlier shows I've done. It starts out by basically saying, as long as we abide in partial darkness, we will continue to be conquered. People think that they cannot get this message about consciousness and just understand the political aspects or just understand the financial aspects. It doesn't work that way. We have to fully awaken on all levels to understand the spiritual aspects of this, to understand how our minds are controlled at multifaceted levels, and to come out of that mind control on all scales. And until that happens, we're going to continue to be manipulated in ways we don't even see until we truly awaken to all of those methods of manipulation. So this is the main focus of the bulk of my work is, knowing what mind control really is, knowing its methods, knowing how it operates, and how it keeps us in not only a cage together as a controlled species, but how it keeps us in dualistic thinking ourselves, individually in our lives. Until we come out of that level of dualism, okay, of us versus them thinking, we're never really going to be able to make any headway toward creating what is real freedom. I want to just briefly let people check out another quote. And it's an author who, regardless of what you make of him, because some people, consider him a charlatan, and, some people say, oh, his stories weren't actually real. Okay, even if it is allegorical fiction that was being written, there's a powerful message in some of his writings, and I'm referring to Carlos Castaneda. He had, in his book, The Teachings of Don Juan, who was a Yaqui shaman, okay, from Latin America, he talks about the mind of the occultist, the mind of the predator, he calls the dark occultist, okay? And that's a perfect word for what these occultists are. They prey upon their own kind. They are predators within the human species, an interspecies.
So what's your...
I'm sorry.
No, go on, Mark. Go on.
Okay. So he said, think for a moment and this is a quote from Castaneda, about the mind of the controller, the real controllers, okay, who he calls the predators. Think for a moment and tell me how you would explain the contradiction between the intelligence of man, the engineer, and the stupidity of his systems of belief, or the stupidity of his contradictory behavior. Sorcerers believe that the predators have given us our systems of beliefs, our ideas of good and evil, our social mores. They are the ones who set up our hopes and expectations and dreams of success or failure. They have given us covetousness, greed, and cowardice. It is the predators who make us complacent, routinary, and egomaniacal. In order to keep us obedient and meek and weak, the predators engage themselves in a stupendous maneuver. Stupendous, of course, from the point of view of a fighting strategist. A horrendous maneuver from the point of view of those who suffer from it. They gave us their mind. Do you hear me? The predators gave us their mind, which becomes our mind. The predator's mind is baroque, contradictory, morose, filled with the fear of being discovered any minute now. That is how they played their game. They got us thinking just like they do, except they hide that from the general population. The population can't see that their mentality, their mindset is in a state of total duality, of us versus them thinking, and that atomizes people and keeps them weak and keeps them unable to transcend the conditions of suffering that are all around them that they don't want to see in place. But as long as they stay in that level of duality in the mind, they are powerless to solve any of those problems, and they're certainly powerless to create anything that resembles true freedom. So mind control has to be conquered. And the way we can do that is by understanding more about how consciousness works. And that is ultimately self-knowledge, by any other name that you want to call it. And I mean the true self. It's not self-knowledge about, being egotistical and getting into everything about yourself and your own life and your own little microcosm. When I say self-knowledge, I'm talking about the essence of who we really are. Self with a capital S. Okay? Some people have called this the spark of the divine that is indwelling in human beings. Okay? I simply refer to it as the higher self, the self with a capital S, not the ego-based lower self, the physical body, the personality, not that. The higher essence of who we are. And in order to get in touch with that, we have to transcend the dualistic mind. Stop thinking of ourselves as it's my situation here and it's somebody else's situation there. There is no such thing as that. There's only the human condition. There's only our situation together. That's it. That's all there is. We are connected. If you look at the verb connected, the root of the verb connect is Latin as well. Con means together. Necto nectare means bound, tie, bound, bind or tie. So we are bound together. We are interconnected. It means we're all in the same situation together. And until we realize that and start really, really processing that, knowing it deeply, intuitively, and acting to transcend this condition of suffering together, to understand that as anybody within this earth-bound system is suffering, is in a state of suffering, then we individually are suffering with them because we're all interconnected. We are all bound together. And it's a very difficult place for most people to get because all of the forms of media are continuously reinforcing the exact opposite. And that's what mind control is.
Yeah, well, that's what all programs are about. I mean, look at all these little sitcoms and stuff. It teaches people that they don't have power. It's like, look, like I said on Bob's show a couple weeks ago, the best visual I could give you for it is when Neo puts his hand up and all the Agent Smith and the other two fire at him, and he goes, no, and he just puts his hand up. Yes. And it stops the bullets. and it's not literally going to stop bullets, but it's an allegory for you can stop their mind control, their control over you.
Anytime you want. Anytime you want. You have the power over your own thoughts, your own emotions, and your own actions. And you know what? When it boils down to it, that's the only things any of us ever have any real power over. Our own thoughts, our own emotions, our own actions, and we need to own them.
And that's all we should have power over.
That's right.
We shouldn't want to have power over somebody else. I don't want to control anybody else. You know, I mean, if you think about it, you have enough issues dealing with yourself and, you know, your own.
That's right.
You wonder why these control freaks, they all die of heart attacks, they have bad hearts, or they have, like, stomach cancer and everything else.
Heart attacks is the number one thing. Think about that allegorically. Think about what that's saying symbolically. Your heart, you're dying of heart failure. The love principle, the true generative principle that creates our reality is care. And that's what's failed in them, and therefore that actually affects the center of the body, the heart, our spiritual center.
Very true, Mark.
Very appropriate.
We are out of time tonight. Thank you for coming on, man. I'm going to have you on again. Too bad I can't have you on Sundays because we've run on at the same time. But guys, seriously, after my show on Sunday, go listen to Mark. Go back and pull his archive and listen to his show. And I suggest you download it and keep it so you can go back and check it out for future reference because it's that important.
Popeye, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. It's been a great show. I'm out.